Well, hello, Vicky. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled that you're here. And I just want to first convey my gratitude and thanks for you to be willing to share your story, your pain, your triumph, your victory, your wisdom, everything that comes with grief and loss, and sharing that for the benefit of others. I know that all the people who purchase this class and view this video are going to be so blessed by hearing your story. And I'm believing that they're going to be able to get healing faster, breakthrough faster, because they're going to grab hold of what you carry and claim it for themselves. So thank you for being willing to share your story and your life with us. I appreciate it so much. And along those lines, we're going to just jump right in. And if you would just share with us a bit of your story and your experience with walking through grief.
Yeah. So 17 months ago, this week, actually, my oldest son, Cole, passed away, and he was just 24 years old. So he was one of those guys that is kind of like a big teddy bear. He had, the beard and the mustache, and 6 feet tall and just a big cuddly guy. He even wore this sweatshirt all the time that had bright pink letters on it that said "free hugs" on it. And people just remembered him for being able to give the best hugs, and he was a great listener, and we miss him a lot.
Yeah. It sounds like an awesome guy.
Yeah. So a little bit about his story, though. He had lots of friends and played sports in elementary school, and then things started changing a little bit in middle school for him. He actually started separating from some of those friends, started creating new friends that we weren't real familiar with, and he started going through some personality changes and things. He was diagnosed in middle school with depression and anxiety, and then in high school he was diagnosed with a mood disorder. And then finally, at the age of 19, he was officially diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which didn't seem like a big shock to us, but yet it was a game changer for us too, and how we treated his personality disorder. So he all of a sudden started self-medicating, which isn't uncommon with mental illness. And it kept getting worse and worse, and stronger and stronger sorts of drugs. And he did go to treatment a couple times. And the last time he went to treatment was last April. And he was there for 2 weeks, but he got very, very sick while he was at treatment. Excuse me. And he ended up going to the emergency room, and he had contracted a MRSA infection, which is kind of like a staph infection, blood infection. And he was in the hospital for 2 weeks battling that infection, and finally passed away in May last year.
And I know for any kind of loss, but especially a parent, like losing a child, like that's something that there's no preparing for that. There's nothing that prepares you for that. But what would you say was most surprising to you, like in the moments and the days after his passing? Like what effects of grief did you not expect, or were really surprised by?
I think the biggest shock was like the physical pain that you feel. And I knew that I would be sad, I would be disappointed. We sat with him at the hospital for 2 weeks and thought about all the possibilities and all the outcomes that could happen. But I think towards the end, I remember texting people and saying, this pain is almost unbearable. I don't think I can. I mean, I look back at my text messages now and I think, wow, I remember that, like how hard that physical pain was. And I actually ended up getting sick through that whole process. I developed an autoimmune disease. And they think that it's probably it's from the stress and the anxiety that I was going through, and the results of grief. I'm working on reversing that now, but it physically makes you sick.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just sharing with somebody else that surprised me so much. Like, first of all, the physicality of the news, like I remember in both cases, like just the physical pain, like literally feeling like someone stabbed you in the heart, like the pain to your heart, you know? And then as days went on, the more like heavy, you know, all encompassing, it's just like a perpetual flu times 10, you know, you're just tired and can't function, and it physically affects you. And I don't know that people talk about that. Maybe they do, and I just had never listened before because I had never lost anybody, but that was so surprising to me. Like, I know I'm sad, but like, you know, why can't I think? And why, you know, all the physical sides of it. Oh, that's true. That's so true.
Yeah. And why am I so tired all the time? Why do I feel like I
All
have
the
to
time.
sleep all day?
All the time. And then when you do sleep, you know, I was saying to my mom, the sorrow, like at one point I really literally thought my bed was going to swallow me whole.
Mm-hmm.
This tangible heaviness on me, like I physically felt the heaviness on me, and I was just waiting for my bed to go whoop and like swallow me up. Like it was surreal and felt almost like supernatural, or that something was in the room, you know, like all of that was really, and that's unnerving and unsettling if you've never had something affect you so strong physically, you know. How did you begin to, like, for you, was it just a matter of time, or how did you begin to deal with the physical side of grief, or how did you combat that?
Mm. Um, Boy, I I I knew that I had two other children, um, and a husband and a job, and I had these things I knew that needed me and required me to be present for them. And I remember thinking, I'm going to give myself some time to just sit in my bedroom. I'm not going to go anywhere. I've got to process this. And I did that. I did that for about a week. I didn't leave my bedroom. I just
Mm,
laid in here and thought about it, and tried to figure out what to do next. And I feel like I didn't think anyone else in the world would ever understand this. No one knows how this feels. I didn't know any other moms that had gone through this. I didn't know. I knew it, you know, my husband, it's different for him. I know losing a brother is different for my kids than it is losing a child.
mhm.
So I felt like the only thing that I could do, I had to lean into God and just say, I don't know what to do. You're going to have to take it from here. And I've always had a strong faith, but I feel like it was really the first time in my life where I said, I really gave it all up to God and just said, I don't know. I don't know what to do. You're going to just have to take it 100%. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I think after like a week, I started getting up more. I started thinking about, I'm just going to take a walk. I'm just going to do little things. I'm going to try to get out of the house every day. I think my kids were a big motivator for that. Like I needed to show them that we need to go on. We have stuff we need to do, not only for
Right.
us, but for Cole too. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Do you remember, especially in those first days and weeks, an example of either some really great advice you got or some really bad advice you got?
mm, well, it's similar, I think. Like some really bad advice was, I remember people saying it's never going to go away. It only gets
Mm.
worse. And I thought, oh my gosh, it can't, like there's no way.
Right.
That can't happen. And on the flip side, I was afraid to let it go because I didn't
Mm.
want to forget. So I did get a real and same sort of advice, but it was in more of a positive way. Somebody told me, don't worry, you won't forget. It will
Mm.
always be there for you to retrieve if you want it. If you move on, if you laugh, if you smile, you won't forget. It'll be okay. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm not going to forget. I can do something else then. Because I think for that first week or two, I was just like sitting here trying to hold on to every little piece of the feeling of the memories of everything. Like I don't want to forget it. So
Yeah.
having that advice that somebody saying you won't ever forget, don't worry about it. So it allowed me to move on.
Yeah, that is such good advice. And that's such a trap for people that like you relate the pain that you're feeling to closeness to them. So I think part of us like wants to stay in that pain because it keeps us emotionally connected to that person, or it makes us recognizing and remembering the loss. But that's so true that you won't forget. And I think it comes up at different stages. I just had it not that long ago, a month or two ago. I had some pictures that were hanging, or not hanging rather, they had been sitting on the floor behind the couch, some framed pictures of both my kids. And I came to the conclusion I wasn't going to hang them up, and we were going to have little ones coming over. So I had to move them because I didn't want them to get knocked over. And I had to like tuck them away in this back closet. And I felt guilty. Like I felt weird in that moment. Like I was putting him away somewhere, you know, that I was moving on with this next season and chapter of my life. And that I was like putting him in the closet. And I had to like just sit with that and acknowledge it and remind myself like, no, like he's not gone. We have pictures of him. We talk about him often. We keep him a part of our day-to-day lives. But I think that's so true, and that's something that we'll continue to have to remind ourselves about. And I think it's something that a lot of people get stuck in that place because they're afraid of forgetting, or like you said, they're afraid of feeling like it makes them a bad mom or a bad something in order to move on or smile or be happy again. Like that's such a common thing that people get stuck with.
Yeah.
That's so good. What about what has been, and I know that you have done some amazing things and that you're such an encouragement to other people, like what has been a gift that you've recognized that you've received in walking through this? Either something that you've noticed growth in yourself, or some, you know, an impact you've been able to make, or things you've been able to do that wouldn't have come your way had this not happened?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if you're looking for it and you're open to it, you will get gifts through this that you would have never, ever gotten if your tragedy or your death hadn't happened in your life. Boy, I would say a couple things. I got some gifts of visits or cards where people came and just told me stories about Cole and things that they had done with him. And we laughed. And those things are just like, oh, so awesome. I even have a couple cards that I've saved from his friends that they took the time to write, a long story about things that they had done together and funny things that Cole had said or done. And those things are so great because we're not always with our people.
Right.
Right. They're out in the world doing their thing like we are. So we don't know everything. So it's fun to, those are still gifts that I still get. People will send me a text message and say, I remember last year Cole and I were here and this happened. It was so funny. So I love that stuff. Or things that were important to him. Like they would say, Cole thought this was really important. And I love hearing that. That's a gift. And I feel like, God is providing that to me as encouragement as I move through life.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest gift, though, is probably my faith just exploded after this happened. In so many different ways, I can't even, it's just a long list. I feel like it happens every day. There's something else that comes about that God is showing me. I'm here and Cole's here and you're still his mom and you still need to care for him. And here's how I want you to do that.
That's so beautiful. That was going to be my next question, but they ended up being one and the same, is like, how has your relationship with the Lord changed? Because what has become kind of a common theme in other conversations is that when something like this happens, it really is where the rubber meets the road. And whether you had no faith and knew you had no faith, or whether you thought you had some faith and found out you really don't have as much as you thought, which was my case when my mom passed away, or the last gentleman I spoke to had a really strong faith and it proved itself faithful. You know what I mean? Like the foundation he had built really carried him through, and it was like confirming for him that this God that he believed in, that the promises of the word that he had been studying for a very long time, like it manifest in his life. He got to operate from a supernatural place of peace and all that kind of stuff. And it's just amazing. So for him, it was a confirmation of what he thought he believed, and it found out he really did believe it. But as said, if your faith gets stronger, to be made aware that your faith isn't as strong as you know, or to find the room for improvement for that. Like, and I don't know of anyone that receives that gift without walking through something like this. You know what I mean? Like, there's nobody, I haven't heard of anybody who's like, oh, I was just headed to the grocery store and realized profoundly that I needed to drastically change the way I relate to God and like appreciate life and all this kind of stuff. Like, the clarity that comes from it, like the preciousness of life, you know, and us are guaranteed tomorrow, and that the people that are around us today, you know, we need to honor and cherish and soak up kind of every minute, because it isn't guaranteed. You don't get that perspective until something, you know, is taken from you. Yeah. So I know. And do you find yourself like living in a different way in light of that? Do you find yourself making different choices and doing different things?
Yeah. I feel, well, there's a few things. There's a lot of things, but I can kind of sum it up into three kind of packages. But one is just figuring out how to be Cole's mom now that he's physically not here, but yet his spirit is still alive, I guess is how I think of it in my head. And still nurturing his spirit and his life. So I try to remember, like, yes, he died, but he also lived. And how do I celebrate that life and carry that on and tell stories about him and things that he believed in? So I guess that's how I think of my job now as his mom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I think the other thing is to laugh. I mean, I think our people that we've lost, they want us to live. They want us to laugh. They want us to enjoy life. They want us to be an example for the rest of the world. And I do think that they can see us and they're watching and things like that. So I'm sorry, go back to the question again. I think there was one other thing I was going to talk about.
Yeah, see, I was saying like ways that you're living life differently or doing things differently because you've been through this.
Yeah, and I think just being really honest and vulnerable, and you become really humble in a process like this, I think, which is why it opens you up to God. But I think as part of that, I've started going around and talking to groups, nonprofits, people about mental illness and helping break that stigma around that, and talking about addiction and how easily that can happen, especially in America.
Yeah.
And it happens to all races, all classes of people. And how to help people with that, how to help families that are supporting people and those that are struggling too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the invitation we all have, right? Is to do something meaningful and amazing, you know, that just because the person isn't here, we can do something in their honor and for their legacy, you know, to make a difference. And that's what's so powerful. And that's, I mean, you wouldn't be out speaking about mental illness probably if you was still here today. Like it probably, you know, you probably wouldn't be in the place that you are making that difference, you know, that you are.
I would not.
What about this? What about if you are looking back and, you know, you're just a little over a year out from it. Is there something that if you went back and could do it again, either that you would have done differently or just advice you'd give somebody if they're maybe at an earlier stage or walking through grief for the first time? What's one thing either you wish you did it differently or you'd like to advise people about?
Oh, I suppose you know, in finding support, I had a really, really hard time with that. I went to some grief groups. I talked to some pastors. I found some people that had lost children. I wasn't really finding what I was looking for. I didn't know what I was looking for really. But right. I knew the advice and the things that I was hearing just didn't seem right to me. So I would encourage people, if you need to find support, like you need help through this process. It's so many levels, emotional, physical, mental. It affects your family, your friends, your work, your health, it's all encompassing. And you have to find support. So if what you're doing right now doesn't feel right, keep looking. Keep looking. You've got to keep searching. You've got to be an advocate for yourself and your family and the person you've lost, and you've got to keep looking. You've got it. But I think people end up going to grief group for 20 years and they're stuck. And
Yeah.
I heard the same, you'd go and hear the same story every week, and I thought, I can't do this. I can't. I can't.
Right.
There's got to be more. I think that was the key. Like, I felt there's got to be more. Like, there's got to be purpose. There's got to be something that I can do that I could carry on. And so keep looking. Don't get stuck.
Yeah. That's such good advice. And that's, for a lot of people, it might be the first time that you're really having to advocate for yourself. It might be the first time that you're really having to practice boundaries. Maybe people haven't walked in boundaries before, but this is the opportunity that this brings, is to get to know yourself really well and to learn how to advocate for yourself and to learn how to have boundaries. And those are all things that will serve you well in the rest of your life and any other area of life. It's just like, especially folks who've lost a child, it's like, that's your biggest fear. You can get through that. Like, what else is life going to throw at you? You know, you are well equipped to handle whatever comes your way right now. And like, none of us asked to be here. We'd all wish that we could be dealing with something else. But if we'll look for the ways that it can benefit us and the things that we can pull out of it to make us better, stronger, more empathetic, more caring people going forward, then that's the better use of our time, you know? So I hear you. I go on a rant about support groups because I'm good ones out there. There has to be in the whole, United States. I'm positive. I personally just haven't visited any. I went to a handful of them and I had the exact same experience that you had. And so that's why I get so excited for this course. And that's why I get excited for interviewing people like you, because even if only through this video, if people are able to see and witness, a group of people who are really walking in fullness of joy, and, we're not stuck reliving and commiserating. We actually, we've been honest about the hurt and the pain, but we've harnessed it and we're moving forward. Like I like to say, on purpose, in purpose, that we're very intentional and it's purposeful. That can be, we can be the digital community for people to be surrounded by. So, it's all so good.
Amen.
Amen. Well, I know for me, you're a sister from another mister. You're such a rare find and such a treat, and you're a fellow Minnesota girl. So I just feel so connected to you on so many levels, and I so appreciate your willingness to be a part of this course and be a part of the journey and to help other people find the resources that they need. So on behalf of all of them, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.